Well, welcome to week one of our digital animation course. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being here. I appreciate it. I think it's like 9 o'clock there. Is that correct? Eastern time, 9:15.
Yes, it is.
So, if you're the only one coming to class, I should probably move the class earlier because you're on Eastern time zone. Um, is that a hardship for you for these times for class?
It just makes for a very long day for me. Um, but it's one of those, I work during the day, as do a lot of people, so it's a little bit harder to do class during working hours.
Sure. And I've already set it at 7 p.m., but is there a better time that would work for your schedule? If you're the only one, there's only 3 people in the class. So if you're the only one, would there be a better time for you? If the other two are watching a recording and you're the only one showing up, I'm really interested in adjusting it to your schedule.
Maybe about an hour earlier, but it's one of those, earlier than that, I have a niece with me, so she's 1. So any earlier still is going to be an inconvenience. So like either 8 or 9, I'll make it work.
Okay.
Just makes for a late night, that's all.
Sure. And then also I was going to ask you, did you receive emails from our announcements that were posted, the introduction and email, and then also the one from the learning coach?
I think I got one from the learning coach. I don't know that I got from you specifically, though, in my email.
All right. If you can check that and let me know during the break. When announcements post, they usually send out emails for the announcement when it gets posted. And I had mine scheduled to post at midnight last night. And I wanted to make sure that you got the corresponding email from that. So during our break, if you could check that. And also I'd be interested to see if you said that hers arrived, but mine were the same. So I'm really kind of.
I actually did get yours. I got a welcome. I got about 2 o'clock this morning, my time, which would have been midnight your time when it posted.
Okay. Awesome. Great. I wanted to make sure you got that. All right. So let's talk about this mod and what we're going to be focusing on. As you know, it's about animation, and let me go over the course description. Introduces basic animation skills. Topics include application and properties of common tools, such as Adobe, the Adobe products that we use, and the integration of audio and video in creating animation. Upon completion, students will be proficient in the functionality, interactivity, and usability of basic drawing and animating tools. So I know this might be a little bit of intimidation, but to a certain extent, what this is about is just time. That's the big variable here, time as in a timeline. So think about your regular drawing tools that you're familiar with, and then think about adding a timeline to that drawing tool. So Adobe Animate, formerly Adobe Flash, is just that. It's a drawing tool with a timeline. And so that's really the simple difference between the drawing tools like Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Animate. This one has time. So when you think about the time element, as I mentioned before we started recording, there are 2 ways to draw pictures over time. And one is where each moment in time you draw a different picture. That would be kind of like they do with cartoons. Every single moment in time is a different image, and then the final animation is when you combine those end to end. So that's one type of animation. The other type of animation is where you allow the computer to do the in-between drawings, and you give it a before image and you give it an after image, and it does the rest. It does the work of going between, and that's why, for short, they call it tweening. So, so both of those are the different types of animation. If you can imagine lines being drawn that can change in size and shape, and shapes that change, then you can imagine a tween. If instead you have a drawing that may make moves that can't be computer generated, then that would be the type of tween where you create an image for each one. So those are the two different types of animation and that we'll be talking about in this class. And you can add, as it mentions here, audio and possibly video. And the video that you would add would be, for example, where your animation, you can interactively include a video as part of your overall animation. And so it's when we create our animation, we publish it. It can be turned into its own video, but in this example here, we're talking about adding and inserting, embedding videos within our animation. That's what this course description is talking about. So, so let's now talk about the objectives of each week and what we can expect. So here in week 1, we're going to define the project and talk about storyboarding. This is always a good week 1 task where we will introduce the tool and then we'll begin to design the storyboard. Now, you probably have heard of storyboards before. It is a time-telling tool, and it's done with, you can create storyboards using drawing tools, and what a storyboard does is it tells the story of your animation. And as I mentioned earlier, how we have the different types of animations, you can tell the story where a single scene is portrayed with each page of the storyboard. So a scene 1 would have an image that represents what's happening in that portion of the story, and it would have a paragraph describing it. Scene 2 would be the next page, the next paper image that describes the next part of the scene. Scene 3 would be the third, and so on. So that's how you can storyboard using time, and each scene would be given its own amount of time, and typically in a number of seconds. And another analogy to this would be a camera shot or a camera angle. That is also a definition of one of these images, a camera angle or a camera shot or a scene. So you have to weigh whether or not your scene will be different camera angles, or it can be complex, because in the industry, a scene can sometimes be used as a more broader concept where it will, you'd have a storyboard for a scene. And in that scene, it would be broken down into different camera angles and camera shots. And so that in and of itself, in the industry, you could call a storyboard for one storyboard for a single scene, and where each of the images are broken up as camera angles. But in our case here, we're not going to go to that necessarily to that degree. We're going to talk about scenes, and we're going to assume that each image is a different scene for our eventual animation. Any questions yet?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, awesome. So in week 2, we're going to take the storyboard that we create, and we give you a sample, a template to generate that storyboard. And in fact, let me briefly talk about week one assignment, so you can kind of have that in mind. So you get to work on a final project. Week one will be the storyboard of the final project, but each week will come together into forming a. Have you had a chance to read over the final project?
I have not looked at the final project. I just kind of glanced earlier today about the week one assignment, and that I assume, we're not just going to make storyboards through the whole entire thing, but
sure.
I assume we're probably going to build on to a final project.
Okay. All right. So the deliverable, the thing that we're going to work on, is to create an animated advertisement. And this is actually where the industry is headed on the web. Web-based animated ads, and they've evolved from just image ads that are just images to now animations that take place, or interactivity that will take place based upon a mouse movement on the ad and so on. So this is an example of that. We're going to be working on an animated advertisement for a particular company. And so it would be where a particular company would talk about its product or service, and you can plan on. We'll find out exactly how the length of this, and people will ask the question, how long does it have to be? And so 15 to 30 seconds is good enough. So that's to answer that question. So you can choose whichever company you want, business, and we do want you to use an actual company instead of a made-up one, and different types of businesses. And in this storyboard, we're going to define the message, the target audience, what are we wanting them to do. There's a link to a video that talks about a storyboard, and then this gives a structure. And so here's an example of the storyboard in scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. As you can see, there is an evolution of time. The images are moving, the clouds are moving, the box or cube is moving, and things are happening. And so that's a good example right there of what the storyboard would look like. And you can see underneath the storyboard is a little description of what takes place. So that's how the storyboard will look. That's an example of one. So, okay, so now that you have that in mind, let's move on to week 2 to talk about what the objectives are in week 2. So in this one, we're developing a story, and we're going to be working on defining that user experience. This is where the story will be developed further in your storyboard. And by the way, students have asked, can we change our storyboard from week 1 to week 2? And the answer is yes. In fact, it's going to be a work in progress, and so it'll evolve from the beginning to the end, and so you can always each week tweak it a little bit, and just to make it work. So this week 2, develop some assets, and that's the objective of this week. And I will be giving you feedback on your storyboard and so think about designing a story in week 1, and then, in fact, I'll jump over here to modules so I can just jump directly to these things without having to go back and forth. So, so week 2 assignment here, where you're drawing the assets. And this would be just images, and you can draw them in Adobe Illustrator and import them, or Adobe Photoshop and import them, or you can even draw them within Adobe Animate. And it's a vector file format, so Adobe Illustrator might work best for just being able to import the vector file and bringing those objects into Adobe Animate. And once they're in, you can then use them, and as they come in, you'll learn that they are just objects and basically lines, and then you can you hear me okay? Maybe I'll stop the video, that might help. All right, can you hear me? Well, I turned off my video because I thought that might be impacting the stability. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I can see you now. And as you were saying that, your audio was breaking up.
All right. So here we just wanted to point out that you can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to just point out you're using Adobe Animate, not Adobe Edge Animate. And here's where we can use, what we want you to do is, if you use Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop to create, we want you to bring those in. We'll want you to create the project file from within the Adobe Animate, and then import those objects into Adobe Animate by the end of week 2.
Let me ask you, do you have a recommendation for those of us that on my computer from the school, I have Edge?
Yeah, what we want you to do is upgrade and get the Adobe Animate. And so do you need assistance in upgrading?
Probably. I was going to say, like I said, I have a Edge on mine, so I would have to get that done here pretty quickly.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll post some instructions on the upgrade. Actually, what you can do is just click on your link, which is the cloud, and click on the link which is the cloud, and then update your software that's right there installed on your system. And so check for app updates. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so check for app updates and make sure you select Adobe Animate when you do that. All right, so so the assets are created, and that if you want to do music, you could bring in music also. And here we're creating Action Script 3 document. And all the instructions there for drawing the assets. So week 1, storyboard. Week 2, create the assets. Week 3, we're going to do the movement, and this is where I was talking to you about placing objects and then moving those objects later in the timeline, and then allowing tweens to be created. Or if you don't want to use tweens, you would then have to create a different image or variation of your image for each frame. So when you think about cartoons, that is exactly what they do. For each cell of the cartoon or each frame, and they run probably 30 frames per second, so that's about 30 different images. And with computer animation now, it's made it a lot easier for cartoonists to take a digitized image and then make it tweak a little bit for each frame. We don't have to be that complex. We can just take advantage of the tweening that is available with Adobe Animate. So here, the week 3 is where we do the movement and the motion, and whatever we do. It doesn't have to be interactive. That's the good news. Interactivity doesn't come until later on in the other courses with Adobe Animate. So this just, all it has to do is move. So, all right, so that's what week 3, animating with actions. And then the overview of week 4 is where we are publishing that animation. And then we ask that you create the Behance portfolio website. And if you have any questions about that, you can just use lynda.com. So this 4th week is for publishing. So week 1, storyboard. Week 2, create the assets. Week 3, move them around in the way that you want them to do in your storyboard. And then week 4, publishing it. So when you create your project file in week 2, week 1, you don't have to create the project file in Adobe Animate. It can be done just with the PDF file. So but when you create your project file, you can submit your project file for weeks 2 and weeks 3. It's not until week 4 that you need to publish it so that it can be published on a website. All right, so how do you feel about this? Is it feeling like it's feasible?
Feeling like it's possible to do. Feels like a lot of work ahead, but feels possible.
Okay. So let's think about for a second. Let's talk about this storyboard and the assignment. Do you have any thoughts of a company or a business that you could create an ad for?
I was looking at the options and I was thinking animal adoption.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I pass I think a humanitarian society that always has these ads for animal adoption, some electronic ads that post on their big screen, and it's always a cute little thing that they're talking about whatever pet it is. And I think that there's another student in these classes, can't remember his name, who also has done some animations for the local animal adoption clinic. So I've had him do that. So, all right, now let's talk about the discussion this week. And I think I missed the discussion. There you go. So what is digital animation? Yeah, digital animation is becoming the wave of the future. It is now we have actions going on your screen, and sometimes the movement will not move unless you have your mouse over it, and then it begins to move. Now, we're not going to worry about that kind of complexity where your animation doesn't begin unless your mouse has moved over it. But it is where things are headed in this industry. I have a friend who started a company creating infographics, animated infographics, and that company was based upon the idea that images now being animated are the wave of the future. Let's talk about the demand in the markets. Let's see what the industry is doing. And what I'll do is I'll go to the website for job postings called Indeed.com. And let's search for digital animation just to see what type of skills and job titles are out there for jobs in the industry. Looks like my connection's having a hard time. It's affecting the search too. There we go. Okay, so digital animation is what I search for. And then down this side, we have the estimates and the salaries in those categories. The type of job, the location of the job, and the company that it would be working for. So here you can see that most of them are in the $40,000 to $45,000 range, and the names of the jobs you can see here, different job titles. They down here they don't have the most common job titles that are showing up, but you can see that multimedia motion graphics designer, and let's that's a sponsor link, sponsored. Each of these are sponsored. So there's 49 different jobs that are showing up here. 43 of them are 40,000 or more. 35 or 45,000 more, 24, and so on. So I'm going to see if, well, let's see, I think I'll keep the digital animation together. And let's look at some of these job descriptions just to see what kind of skills they would require and the type of company that's hiring. So this is an advertising agency that's looking for a digital animator. And they call it multimedia motion graphics designer. So they don't call it this digital animator. They have a different name for it. And producing great work and so on. Extensive experience designing for all media with core competency in multi-dimensional digital animation. What that means would be both 2D or 3D digital animation. Integrating audio, graphics, and video as necessary. So that's good because that's what we're focused on this week. They'll participate in the creative process at multiple stages of projects, including conceptualization, storyboarding, there we go, we got that. Animating, that's week 3. Editing and typography. Work is produced for mediums including commercial, broadcast TV, that's a good point, that some of our work can even be shown in TV, digital video, and mobile. That's another important point. We have the mobile category that we have to keep in mind. Additional expertise in developing multimedia presentations. Again, when they say multimedia, that would be audio, video, and imagery. To educate, entertain, and develop new businesses desired. Designer will also use video and photography equipment to capture images or audio devices for multimedia projects. So they're expected to be skilled on photography equipment for generating videos, also for microphones and so on for creating sound capture. Identify the best techniques and methods to communicate material. Multimedia motion graphics designer must be able to produce a cohesive look and theme to achieve project goals and align with creative brief for full brand integration. So creative brief, that's differentiated from a storyboard that was mentioned up here, storyboarding. And this full brand integration, you probably already know this, but companies come with their own branding manual. Are you familiar with that concept where it's called like a media kit? It's where companies give examples of their logos. They give examples of the exact colors and the codes for their colors. It talks about the styling. Have you ever seen one of those that I'm talking about?
I have seen one. Another thing to add into it is it gives like specific fonts as well that you to use, or like if there's overseas and they do different colorations because of the what's the word I'm looking for like the people that are over there, say they are offended by the color red in a logo, then you have a specific media kit for that country or for that type of people. That way you know what to use.
Yes, exactly.
It's basically for anybody to be able to pick up in a design team and know what colors, what logos, what fonts, what everything is to be used for that specific branding.
Yes. And as you can see, these animations are part of that branding. If it's possible for you to locate a media kit for an adoption, the animal adoption, that would be quite interesting. I don't know if we'll find one, but it would be interesting for you to consider that aspect of your storyboard, the fact that the brand integration is as key as for your single images as it would be for animations. So let's talk about the responsibilities. A designer will develop multimedia creative solutions as directed by creative director. So that's the person you would report to as a digital animator. As described in client creative brief, will be the lead hands-on creative executor of outstanding creative elements on a single or multimedia platform. As part of the multimedia design process, designer may meet with clients, assist in development of visual creative strategy, work on the project with Harvest creative team, test a presentation, and system presentation to prospective current clients. So here are the skills. Competent in a Mac environment, familiar with current computer programming languages, HTML and Java. My guess is that would really be JavaScript. And now that's outside the context of this class, but you have learned some HTML in your other classes. We haven't yet focused on JavaScript. That doesn't come along till the third Adobe Animate class in the series of animated classes that we teach, where we teach some JavaScript using code snippets. So that should be not Java, but JavaScript, my guess. And highly experienced in design software, Adobe After Effects. That's something we haven't yet worked with. InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, and Cinema 4D. Now, as you notice, Adobe Animate's not in that list. And what I'll do is I'll search for a job description here in just a minute that includes Adobe Animate. Adobe Animate is kind of new. It's normally Adobe Flash, and so let's see, you should be able to multitask and so on. Okay, bachelor's degree, proven work, minimum 3 years experience. It's funny here, it says 2 years. Minimum 3 years, multimedia graphic design. Okay, so that's an example of a multimedia motion graphic designer. This time, let's search for let's see, I just had it on my mind and now I can't remember what I was going to search for. Different. Oh, yeah. We're going to search for Adobe Animate specifically this time as part of the job description. Okay, so motion designer, visual designer, graphic designer, digital media designer, interactive editor, check that out, Nickelodeon. Senior digital media designer, game programmer, don't worry, that doesn't happen until our 3rd class. Senior graphic designer, print and web. Let's look at this particular job description. Looks like somebody may have gotten that job already. Interactive editor. Collaborate with creative. Let's come down here to the tools. I think that this one should have Adobe Animate. There it is. Okay, so must have experience in Creative Suite 6 or newer, specifically Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Animate, previously Adobe Flash Professional, Adobe Premiere Pro, and Adobe Media Encoder. Required knowledge of logic-based programming language like ActionScript 3.0 that we teach you in the 3rd class, or HTML5 and JavaScript. Knowledge of compression rates, video and audio codecs, frame rates, standard dimensions in both digital and analog media formats. So that gives you a little bit of what the industry is doing. I want to now show you, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay, now what I want to do is look at the trends so you can kind of see on some of these skills and how the industry is so there's just Flash. I wonder if we should do Adobe Flash. All right, so as you can see, over the past 4 years, it's really tapered off. And this is why Adobe Animate has been rebranded just because the interest in Adobe Flash has just really waned ever since 2012. This is about the time the iPhone, or Steve Jobs and the iPhone said what he said about Adobe Flash and the runtime Flash player on his iPhone. And ever since that time, it just peaked and really fell off. So instead of Adobe Flash creating the ActionScript-based SWF files, which are dependent upon using Flash Player, now Adobe allows you to export to HTML5 when you publish and JavaScript. So let me now add some terms, HTML5, and show you how that's doing. HTML5 has become very strong relative to Adobe Flash. And then I'll just throw in JavaScript so you can kind of see that too. So these are the published output. The nice thing about Adobe Animate is that it will automatically generate the HTML5, so you don't even have to do it yourself. I know that in our classes we teach you how to do HTML and CSS, but when it comes to JavaScript and doing interactive, the Adobe Animate tool will publish these files and do the work for you as you use code snippets. So again, that's in the third class. In this class, it won't be using any JavaScript. It will, in week 2, we have you create ActionScript 3.0. ActionScript 3.0 file, which is SWF, and then week 3 we allow you to bring that into a Canvas-based project file, which publishes to HTML5 and JavaScript. So you can see the trends are pretty strong for HTML5 as well as JavaScript, but most importantly, it's HTML5, and so it's not bad that we're teaching you Adobe Flash, or excuse me, Adobe Animate. Let me just see. There's probably not a lot of data for Adobe Animate. I haven't tried this query yet recently. Yeah, there's just not enough out there. If we go to just looking for Adobe Animate, there's not a lot of jobs looking for this particular tool. So it hasn't yet caught on, the renaming of this. But as you can see, it has some potential for doing some pretty good work. Let me just see how the jobs are doing with Adobe Flash. You can see there's some more jobs there. So with all this, it's just ironic that that what's happening in the industry is that we're going to animation ads. And so with all that, you might think, well, why aren't these tools really showing this increased interest in animated advertising? And so it's a little bit of a dichotomy there, because sometimes you saw with those job descriptions, they're looking for individuals who can code from scratch. Now, if you go to W3 Schools, I want to show you just a little bit about what can be done. In our class, we are focused on using Adobe Animate, but HTML5 was actually created so that it could take on some of the characteristics and the capabilities that were only available using Adobe Flash, which has now been renamed to Adobe Animate. So this website teaches you HTML and CSS also. And if you think about animation, you might think, well, what can I do now with animation? And So the CSS3, which is the latest CSS, does allow you to do animations. Now, we're not going to focus on this in this class. Again, we're using the Adobe Animate tool, but I just want to help you realize how the evolution of the program, or of the, I say programming language, but evolution of HTML along to become HTML5, along with the evolution of CSS, now we have CSS3, allows the web developers to do their own animation without using some of the tools that we're using. And so, as you can see, CSS3 specifically now has the animation property. And so you can see that right there, the animation property. It's one of the CSS properties. It's a new property with CSS3, and this is supported by these browsers. So some web developers are just learning how to do the animation just by doing it within CSS, or actually CSS3. So we're not going to focus on this. We're just going to use the tool. But as you can see, it can be done without the tool. So here's an example of an animation that's taking place, and this is just being done with CSS. So the CSS is right up here. It's within the style tags of your HTML. So, and this is a specific animation that is making that move like that with 100 pixels. So, for example, if you change it to the width to 200 pixels, it becomes a rectangle. If you change the height to 200 pixels, it'll go back to being a square, but just a larger one. Change the background to blue, and you change the color. And then here we've got these different, these are for these particular browsers. When a browser takes on the challenge of interpreting CSS, you can see it's slightly different from one different browser to the next. Animation delay property is not supported in Internet Explorer 9. What I was just showing is that now when you change this animation, this second value here, it slows down. It takes the number of seconds for it to move all the way across there. And then the position of the move here. So this my move references this here, so the left position and where it takes place. So, so as you can see, animation can be done in CSS3. So the reason why this is here is because as the web has become less dependent upon a Flash player, because animations that have been created with Adobe Flash in the past were dependent upon you downloading and installing the Adobe Flash player. And so as they used to be more and more dependent upon that, then with HTML5 and CSS3, that dependency has been removed. And the value of that is HTML5 and CSS3 is non-proprietary, meaning it's open to anybody. The SWF file is actually a proprietary file format. The Flash player is a proprietary tool, and it would process an animation in a way that wasn't open to to any other way of doing it. So there's an example of animation using CSS3. HTML5 canvas attribute also is new with HTML5, the canvas attribute. And down here, scroll down to HTML5, and here's the canvas. And this canvas is also, once again, a new and improved version of HTML. And what it's all about is drawing a drawing. This is not about animation, but Canvas is about drawing. And this year, you can disregard that. It's only would be there if my browser didn't. So let's change the border, and change color. So the canvas is like a place to draw. And so along with that animation, along with this concept of a canvas, we now have a more robust way for a browser to render images on the fly, basically draw images, and that's what's going on here. This is image, the square is being drawn, and also animate them. So, and this is new with HTML5. Now, when we go into week 3 and we move our project from an ActionScript-based project, which is the old Adobe Flash Professional based file format, to the new Canvas-based file format, we can then export or publish animations, and Adobe Animate will actually be doing all the coding. It will create its output with a Canvas tag, and it doesn't go into the CSS. The Adobe Animate is not taking advantage of the CSS3 changes yet, but they definitely are taking advantage of the new Canvas tag for drawing. And so their Adobe Animate, the published output, is kind of doing manually doing what sometimes CSS3 could do for it. But right now, Adobe, the people at Adobe are not taking advantage of CSS3. Only this HTML5 Canvas tag. So when in the week 3 or even in the week 4, when we do our publishing, we're going to look at the output from that publish, and we will see the HTML5, the HTML document, and we will see the Canvas tag right there. And so basically, Adobe Animate is taking advantage of sitting on top of HTML5. And all right, well, it's time to first take a break. And what I'll do is I'll pause the recording. And then when you're back, just let me know. And I'll step away for just a minute here. All right, so let me ask you just a couple questions, and just to see how I'm doing. So, how do we know whether or not the industry is needing more animators? What do we have to base that on? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the way to figure out whether or not you need more animators is what is the demand for it. If animation is the way things are going.
Did you cut out? I was listening. Oh.
and it doesn't seem any growth, then you wouldn't need it.
Okay, yeah. So which works better, static versus animated ads?
I would say right now, animated's going to catch your attention a lot more than static.
Oh, this is an interesting article because it says they expected animated ads to have a higher click-through rate than the static ads. I checked the data and informed them that the static ads were actually achieving a click-through rate 4 times higher than the animated ads. Could this be true? I theorized that because it was a remarketing campaign, the static ads were more effective since previous visitors would recognize the brand logo instantly. So this CTR stands for click-through rate. Static, half, not 1%, but half of 1%. Animated, 0.12. Advertiser B, 0.18, 0.10. So animated is actually showing lower with this guy's statistics. And he says, what are your findings? You think this is an exception? And so let's check the data here. This is about 3 years old. This is really the analysis of a marketing campaign. So that's what that data is about. So how do we know for sure? Animated versus static. What type of banner ad is right for you? This is 2015. And look at this. According to Google's display benchmarks for all verticals and ads sizes, in June 2015, HTML5 Flash ads had a lower click-through rate than static ads by 71%. My word. That's interesting. So again, 2 ads now saying that, and here we have Google's display benchmarks. Some of the most interesting banner ads are animated, and they can elicit brand awareness and generate social sharing and conversation. Some companies are even animating their logo. So let's look at this link to see what kind of banner ads are out there. Banner Gurus is not a trusted website. They call it a Flash banner, but it's just an animated banner, animated web banner creating. This one is creating using Adobe Flash, which is then, this one would be dependent upon the Flash player being installed. They are not necessarily interactive, but they can be. Physically flash mirrors are SWF objects embedded into web pages. Now, this SWF is the ActionScript 3.0 based published output for Adobe Flash, and we are working to get away from that because we don't want to be dependent upon Adobe Flash Player being installed, because you might not know this, but Adobe stopped supporting Adobe Flash Player on their mobile devices. So with that being gone, it makes it so you can't put an SWF file or view in a browser an SWF file on a mobile handheld device. So
Hey, Chip, let me ask you a question.
yeah.
And I'm trying to remember if it was years ago. I think I made an animated, not necessarily a fully animated, ad in Photoshop using frames. Was that possible, or was I thinking of something different?
It was an animated GIF.
Yeah, that was it.
Yep. In Photoshop.
That was it. Is that sort of along the same?
Definitely. Yep. Definitely. Very same. Very similar. Did you do that in a class?
No, I actually was working for a newspaper in their graphic design department, and somebody wanted one made, and I basically Google searched how to make one and did it from scratch. So it was really hard back then when you basically had to Google search how to do it because nobody knew how to do it.
Yeah. So it's interesting that we don't leverage that in this class, but it's fairly limited. Did you have?
I mean, you still. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I said you still were able to tell it. You know, you want 10 seconds between the frame slide.
So here, you cannot take advantage of tweening, which the tweening of Adobe Animate is one difference. This here is a series of photos and or a video, which can then be generated to a GIF file. You have the timeline here, and then the just making frames from the layers, storyboard frames, and then you can set it to loop. So this is obviously not a tween. It is simulating motion simply by having different images that are put back to back and then glued together and then exported as a GIF file. So that's what that is. Animated GIFs are one way you can do an animated ad, but we don't want to do that in our class.
No, I was just saying, I just remember doing it years ago to make movement animated ad.
Interesting that there is some demand for animated GIF. In the industry. So there is some demand for creating animated GIFs out there. So let's go back to the conversation of so we're not exactly, we have mixed information about the popularity of animated ads and their growth and their effectiveness in click-through rate. And also we are mentioning that the Adobe Animate is taking advantage of this HTML5 canvas tag, but not yet taking advantage of the CSS3. And the trends, we've seen some trends of Adobe Flash going down, but HTML5 and JavaScript staying high and strong. And that is going to be the published output of our week 4 animation. So here in the discussion, we talk about the fact that graphic designers are being asked to take on some of these animated ads, and like you were asked to take on, you created one in Photoshop. So we call them these mini movies, and so in this discussion, we're going to talk research what the role is for graphic designers in digital animation, and you can do what I did by doing some searching and reading up of job descriptions, like I did. In fact, you're welcome to use a job description as one of your references in your discussion, if that helps. Here they're wanting you to also use potentially ProQuest and Shark in your research. So that would be the first part, is what's the role of the graphic designers in digital animation, what types of things need to be considered to create a good user experience, and best practices for creating a good UI when creating these animations. So that's a lot to get into. The role, as we read some of that, one of those job descriptions, it talked about the involvement of the individual and in the workflow of things, and talked about how to work with the creative director and with the client, and so then, but we haven't really gotten into the good what it means to have a good user experience. UX stands for user experience, and best practice for creating a good UI or user interface. So so what's the connection here between graphic designers and digital animation and the good user experience? So the ideas along the lines of good user experience will, here the user experience is going to be a function of that timeline, the storyboard, and we don't have to worry about interactivity with this, just because that's out of the scope of the animation. We don't need to worry about that. So some of the findings of good user experience really is just a visual experience, non-interactive visual experience, and some of the simple principles of user experience would apply there. For the second part of this discussion, find one example of what you think is effective digital animated advertising. In your words, tell us why. Refer to the research you did in the first part to help express your reasons. So this user experience and some effective animated advertising, we can look at some examples of that online just to see and maybe get some ideas. I'm going to give you a link here. can talk about their effectiveness.
I think a good example to use for user experience would be kind of like guest experience, like Disney and that. Some of their rides, they want their experience, their user interface and their experience to where they may not be hands-on and touchy, but they can remember it and it's memorable and you can relate to it and understand it.
Yep, those are great principles. Here I have a link of the top 10 animated video ads, 2014. As you can see here, we have a statistic. Online video advertising has seen its viewers increase by 30% compared to 2013, and over half of market professionals worldwide cite video as the type of content with the best return on investment. Now, that's good to read. While the number of video ads are increasing, there it is right there, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find great content. So here's some examples of an animated video ad. And let's talk about it. We'll watch it and we'll talk about it.
Education is freedom. The freedom to imagine a better life and make it a reality.
All right, so far, have we seen any tweens? Has this been made up of any tweens?
Yes.
All right, let's go back.
The freedom to imagine a better life and make it a reality. Unfortunately, the reality for Idaho children is an education system that's holding them back. It happens early in a child's life. Right now, nearly half of our pre-K kids aren't ready for kindergarten. By third grade, nearly a third of them won't be reading at grade level. This time in a child's life is critical. Studies show that between kindergarten and third grade, children learn to read, and after third grade, they read to learn. If they're not reading at grade level by the fourth grade, they'll struggle in school and be more likely to drop out.
Okay, that's long enough. I mean, we don't want to watch all of that ad. So lots of animations, tweens going on there. Great story being told. Very continuous flow. The scenes changed without the scene transition was very, very impressive because the scene would change. The transition from one scene to the next was what was almost too, you couldn't even see. It just happened. And so I like the fact that the transition.
But don't you want a tween like that to be seamless?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking about the entire scene. The entire scene, they kind of built up a whole different background. Yes, I agree with you. The animations is exactly what helped this story be told and feel continuous. And see, he says his favorite part is at the 30 mark, child floating through the crowds. So we go through several scenes here, and it is the it's the tweens that keep it flowing. So for here, for example, watch this.
Half of our pre-K
so there we inside a room. See that movement right there.
By third grade,
see that transition.
Nearly a third of them won't be reading at grade level.
Is an incredible. See that transition right there.
Studies show that between kindergarten and third grade,
and that transition. So the story, the transition from one scene to the next is what is so well. That's a real effective part of this ad, because the entire scene and background is being changed from one to the next, and yet there's a story being told that continuously goes throughout. And
imagine a better life.
That's what's so good about this. So
unfortunately, the reality
here the boy
children is an education system that's holding
back behind the door.
It happens early in a child's life.
He shows up here.
Right now, nearly half of our
moves out of this scene, and here's a new scene right there.
By third grade, nearly a third of them won't be reading at grade level. This time in a child's life
Something
is critical. Studies
really
show that
connects
between kindergarten and third
each
grade,
scene
children learn to read. And after
to the
third
next
grade,
scene. So that's a good principle of the continuity, the transition from one scene to the next. But I agree with you that
I think with that ad specifically, like you were saying, the transitions, how they go from one to the other so seamlessly, is they use parts and pieces and integrate it from one scene to the other to tie them together. I think if you went from one scene to another without that tie-in between the two, or like that string between the two to hold it together, it would be choppy.
Yep. Continuity was exceptional with that one. I agree. Let's watch this for a few seconds of this one.
If this were the year 2020, what would you see? You'd see another 500 million people in the world. You'd see most of them moving to big cities. You'd see our planet being pushed close to its tipping point. If this were the...
You know what? This one doesn't move me as much as the other one. One thing is for me, it's too fast. It's just, there's got a lot going on, and I'm not ready to follow at the pace that it's going.
Year 2020, you'd see exactly what DuPont sees today. After all, we're a science company, and science is a futures business. And while we look to that future, our science is transforming the present. We started today's path forward 5 years ago, and we stand exactly where we need to be to meet the science challenges of today and tomorrow. We've divested in some areas and reinvested in others, namely agriculture and nutrition, to provide more nutritious foods, new materials and technology.
That's okay. I like the other one better.
There's a couple spots in that one that seem to flow really well, but for the most part, it doesn't flow smoothly. It's kind of choppy. But like I see the concept of them following the line, and the line moves to do the different sections. But in some parts, it just seems like it goes too fast to cut it out to where it's not real smooth transitions, and it makes it hard.
Yeah. Let's move on to another one here. They're fairly long ads. I don't know if they run on TV or what, and they've got audio.
Wonder. Wonder is that feeling you get when you see, hear, or do something for the very first time. Maybe it was your first bike ride with the wind in your hair and experiencing your first taste of freedom. Or maybe it was your first time going to the movies and seeing your favorite characters come to life. Our greatest feeling of wonder comes from story.
What do you think?
It's a little bit better than the last one, but still has the same choppiness in certain scenes when it jumps from one to another. I think it's a little bit better.
Yeah, it just moves a little too fast for me.
Whether it's an adventure, romance, or comedy, a story will always have its unique way of making you feel awe, curiosity, and wonder. We are Wonderlust, and we love to tell stories. To tell your story, we like to listen, ask questions, and uncover a unique and original idea that will showcase your brand. Once we have the script in place, we visualize the concepts and breathe life into the story. This is where we shine. Our wonderful design concepts will provide simplicity and clarity in a world of distraction. This will lead to a greater consumer experience, encouraging viewers to share. Behind every idea, there's a story waiting to be discovered, longing to be told. And every great story begins and ends in wonder.
Do you think the last two ads are hard to follow because you kind of lose the reasoning behind them or who the company's about, to where the first one you knew obviously it was about kids and learning, and if you look at the Idaho Don't Let You Fail, it falls right in with the storyline with the picture, to where these two you kind of lose who the company is and what the purpose of their ad is.
Yeah, I agree with you. The emotional tie-in, it might be the subject why it's so emotionally moving. The very first one, I was just very emotionally tied into it. These, I'm less interested, and I'm kind of getting the feeling like somebody's trying to impress me with their animated ability, rather than they really are caring. They really are believing and caring that this is making a difference. And so that's affecting me, I think. It just seems like they're showing off their ability to animate.
Well, I think, too, you're losing their whole campaign reasoning behind it. Like Wonderlust, what was their questioning was, are you wondering? Well, yeah, that's going to leave you wondering, but are you remember what you're wondering about with that ad? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, their logo's in there at the end, but if you're not familiar with their logo, then you're going, what did I just watch? To where the first one, they had their campaign ad slogan, and it tied in with their actual ad to where you now know, kids and what it's about, and it goes with the storyline, to where the others, I don't think it really went with the storyline that they were telling. I think with these animated ads, to be successful is they have to make sense to the person watching them. It's kind of like ones that catch your eye and make you go, what did I just watch? Or the ones that put an impression in your head and you remember them. Prime example, who was it that did the underwear ad around the Super Bowl, where the people were in their underwear? You remember what it was for, you know what I mean? And it was talked about. To where if you put an ad up like the last two that we've seen that are not going to be memorable, it doesn't get across what it's supposed to.
Yep, I agree. I agree with you. All right, let's look at this one.
Orange. Orange is unique. It's warm and cool. It's bold and hard to ignore. Orange makes us smile. You can't compare it to apples, and nothing rhymes with it. It's that special. This is orange. This orange is orange. This tire is orange. That might seem out of the blue, but let's explain. When it comes to choosing tires, it doesn't have to be black and white. You can't tell by looking at it, but this tire is made from oranges. This is our Avid Ascend, our first mainstream tire ever to combine natural and synthetic rubbers with the natural oil from orange peels. That's right, orange peels. Weird, right? But awesome, because it means less petroleum needed to manufacture the tire, making it easier on the planet. This is part of our Blue Earth promise. Orange oil also makes the tire stronger. This means longer tread life, increased fuel efficiency, and better all-season grip. All this backed by our unlimited kilometer warranty for up to 6 years. Our orange oil technology is tested here because we're passionate about earning your trust here. Orange is high-performing, longer-lasting, better for the planet. The Avid Ascend from Yokohama. It's orange.
What'd you think?
I like it.
Yeah, so did I. There was absolutely no transition from one scene to the next, but that's kind of what I liked about it, because the the tie between the images they showed me and
They made sense.
yeah, and the script, that was really well done. And
It all tied in.
yeah, it the pace of it was fine, and it was so easy to identify what I was listening to with what I was watching. They supplemented each other very, very effectively. The audio track, the script, as well as the images being shown, that was very well done. Yeah, these guys are good.
On September 14th, 2015, the world will experience an event unlike any other in history. All around the globe, hands will unite in celebration as we join hands across the world. For more than 1 week, shows, exhibitions, conferences, and surprise events will be held in more than 50 cities worldwide. A showcase to inspire, create, and share a glimpse of the world of tomorrow as we globally thrive to create a future filled with unity, peace, and abundance for all. Join us in achieving the first ever global common goal as we all join hands to build a new world for this and future generations. Navaganza 2015, take your place in history.
What did you think?
I think the transitions between the different scenes worked, but I'm not quite sure what it was telling me.
I agree.
I think they did a good job with the transitions as far as using the coloration in that, but it doesn't tell me what does that even mean?
I agree.
The thing I got out of it is it's festivals. That's all I got. It doesn't tell me what it is. It doesn't make me want to go, ooh, that's the festival I want to go to. But they did do a good job as far as pulling the transitions together, but I don't think that the ad really kind of told me anything about it.
I agree completely. Isn't that interesting that you and I, our experiences are similar, and obviously, you know, it would probably other people would agree. The images were very, the illustrations were very well done, but the script and the content and what they tried to get me to do, man, that was weak. You know?
I think the script worked well with the images. You know, I mean, you could hear what he was saying and see what he was saying, but to me, it was kind of like a story. You know what I mean? Like it put like what he was saying, put those images in my head that I was seeing. You know, the festival with the people, the holding the hands, the world, you know, that all went together. But to me, it was just like a story. There was no purpose of the story. It was just a story that went on.
Yes, I agree. Yep. Yeah, let's look at this one.
The world makes 500 billion electronic payments every year that take 36 trillion hours to process and cost people tens of billions in fees. Money uses old, inefficient technologies that are slow and expensive and run on disconnected networks. The internet has made the world a flatter, more connected place, but payments have not kept up. It's time for money to evolve. Introducing Ripple, a new global payment network that does for money what the internet did for information. With Ripple, payments are as easy as email. You can send currency of any kind to anyone in the world in seconds for next to nothing. It creates new businesses, helps existing businesses grow, supports powerful applications, gives people control of their money, and makes the global economy accessible to billions of people without access to banks and financial institutions. The future of money is going to be a smarter, faster, more efficient, and prosperous place for everyone. Come join the growing Ripple community and help build the network that will transform the way the world does business. The world makes fun.
You know, they do end with the logo. Transitions were pretty good. The story was pretty good. You know, it was a little bit of a distraction, the animations.
I think the beginning part up until their logo, I had no idea what it was. Once they put the logo in and the animation between the logo and the storyline, then it made sense. But the animation prior to the first logo made no sense.
Yeah, and it's amazing because part of the value of these ads, I'm measuring, one of the metrics I'm measuring is how much is this ad making me want to do something? The call to action. How effective is this thing being in changing me? How effective of an ad is it? Does it really move me? And I think the very first one that we looked at is the one that's moved me the most. Moved me to do something, or think something, or buy something, or think differently about something. So that each of these I'm evaluating by how effective they are in being an ad.
Right. I think the first one was the strongest one. I think the last one, it would not have been strong if they would not have put their logo in it.
Uh-huh.
I think the middle two, I mean, they looked appeasing to the eyes and to the storyline, but it didn't catch me enough to make me go, I understood the concept, I know who the company is. And that's the ultimate goal for the advertiser, is to catch your attention, get their message across, and make you remember that message, to where the two middle ones, I don't think they did. And like I said, I think, me personally, what saved the last one was putting the logo and the name in it.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was effective. You know, ending up the logo, I was like, okay, that's your brand, that's your stamp. So I get that. No flash of a logo there.
Three and a half years ago, while my fiance Sarah and I were making love, I had a heart attack.
Okay.
911, what's your emergency?
I was 48 and Sarah was 26 at the time, so there was a 22-year difference.
When I met Tim, I had no idea how old he was. It never seemed like it should even matter.
We had been pretty blithe about the whole age difference thing, but this was something that spoke directly to the fact that we're in completely different circumstances in a lot of ways, and that's going to be true the rest of our lives together.
I come from parents who have a big age difference, and my mom wanted me to be warned that in 20 years it's not going to be the same. I understand that that is her reality, but it's not mine yet. And
wow.
If in 20
That's
years
graphic.
he's still my best friend, that's what matters.
The EMTs were working on me, and I looked over, and Sarah was packing an over-the-shoulder kind of overnight bag.
Sweater and clean clothes and his running shoes.
Just something for my stay in the hospital. And the fact that she was so sure that I was coming back, that really meant a lot to me. It made me realize that even if my life didn't have significance for me, it had significance for her.
Yes, this is my fear, that something like this could happen again. But that's everybody's fear, I think, if they're in a committed relationship. And I don't think it really matters what you're going to do without the other person. It matters what you're going to do with that person while you're together.
Sarah and I got married 6 months after I had my heart attack. I had spent pretty much my whole adult life doing what I wanted, how I wanted, when I wanted. I smoked 2 packs a day for about 30 years. In a lot of ways, meeting Sarah was the beginning of my life. Sometimes what love can do is save you from yourself.
Did it cut out?
Yeah, it froze. I don't know that I like that one near as much. I didn't really like it. Like, I think some of the animation goes well to make a point, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Guess there's an article column that they want you to read.
Well, and maybe that's what that ad is portraying is that article, but from an advertising standpoint, I don't think it works.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the greatest stories of our time were never told in full. Imagine the words of our greatest authors, philosophers, and spiritual leaders were never heard, never known, their wisdom never passed down to future generations. The vast majority of the Buddha's teachings exist on carved wooden blocks in classical Tibetan, a language that is fast fading from this earth. Numbering over 200,000 pages, these untranslated teachings contain a world of insight, and yet so few people understand this language that unless it is translated now, this priceless world heritage could be lost forever. In 2009, a group of scholars, translators, and volunteers from all walks of life gathered to preserve this treasure. Together they formed 84,000. Its mission, the monumental task of translating all the Buddha's teachings into modern languages, making them accessible to everyone, free of charge. Compassion, karma, generosity, wisdom. Page by page, these translations have produced gems of insight into how to confront suffering and find calm in our stressful world, on conducting ethical business and how to guide our children. If we can unlock all of these teachings, imagine what else we might find. In an age when we search relentlessly for answers online, in each other, in our own belief systems and those of others, these ancient teachings could change the way we understand our world and ourselves. Join us on this historic undertaking. Sponsor a page of translation and help share the words of the Buddha with the world.
Well,
I like it. It gets the message across really well, and it seems to flow really well. I like that one. It's not too overpowering, or it doesn't pull the emotion like the first one, but it gets the point across to where you understand it.
this is their website. Giant Ant is a creative studio that specializes in animation and documentary. We write, produce, and direct stories for a carefully chosen list of clients who want to change the way we see the world.
I think it does that.
There's that one we just watched. There's that one we liked.
Ironically, the ones we liked are the ones
Yeah.
that says they're doing something right.
Yeah. There's the link.
Ever wonder what other people are thinking? Whose shoes would you like to walk in for a day? What's the top song on your party playlist? No, wait. Who would you invite to your party? Curious? Just ask. Ask FM is a place for answers to the stuff you care about. Go to your friends' profiles, or any profile you find interesting. Ask a question. Learn something new. Here you can ask the things you maybe didn't want to in person, and you'll be surprised how much you'll learn about your friend, your world, and yourself while you're at it. Curiosity goes a long way here. Ask anything. What are you doing this weekend? What movies make you cry? Why don't horses wear socks? Ask in secret, or be out in the open. You're in control here. Don't feel like opening up to everyone yet? You can turn anonymous questions off at the click of a button. On Ask FM, you can find out what people really think of your band. Who likes man buns anyways? And maybe even let it slip about your crush. Go ahead. Be curious. Just ask.
Logo at the end.
I think the beginning was strong. Towards the end, they started losing it just a little bit.
Yeah.
But the beginning part of it, you understood what, like the animation went with the storyline. I think towards the end, they started losing it a little bit.
Yeah, there's some transitions were pretty good. They're pretty good with transitions. So let's talk about your storyboard. Let's just give it a little bit of brainstorming. We can call it a night here. So given these things, do you have any thoughts about your approach? What story you might want to tell? Are you still thinking about this animal adoption story?
I am, and I've actually, when I looked at it earlier this afternoon, I kind of mulled over in my head a quick idea. Just as you were saying, like with the frames and the transitions, I kind of have an idea. It'll start out blank and then start with like a puppy coming in and finding a box and it says adopt me on it and flips in the box, and then in comes the kid and picks up the box and out pops the puppy.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, the focus is on a puppy, so you'll remember that, and then at the end, you have your person who gets the puppy.
All right, so let's think about how to implement this. Just because we got to keep in mind the implementation of this, and we have to think about all the drawing and whether or not we use tweens to tell the story, or they use a lot of tweening here in their going from transitioning. So can you think, how would you animate the story that you just told? What approach would you take in animation?
As far as the tweens?
Yeah, what would have to be drawn, and what would have to be moved in the drawing?
The three main things that would have to be drawn would be obviously the puppy, the box, and the person. Those are the three main things.
Okay.
As far as the tweens in between, you got to figure out, how you're going to set it up in between. I guess I'm going to say frames, because you think of it that way. How you're going to jump from one to another if it goes from like, for example, a puppy is the main thing, and then it goes for a person on the other one. You got to figure out how to transition in between those two.
Yes. Think about drawing the puppy, and then if the puppy moves, every movement will have to be drawn. It's like you're thinking.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to think about being. I don't want you to bite off more than you can handle, and I want you to think like an animator, and I want you to think like you were a cartoonist, but keep in mind the cartoonist is drawing every single scene, and I don't know how many scenes every single frame. I don't know. So that's what I'm concerned about. If your doggy that you draw in frame 1 makes a little move, then you're going to have to draw that doggy in frame 2. You might copy and paste and then make. What I was saying is, if you draw your doggy, your puppy, and each frame, think like a cartoonist. Each frame is going to be a different drawing.
Right, I gotcha.
So you could do that, and the way you do that is you copy the object of frame 1, you paste it in frame 2, and you hide the object in frame 1, and you make the movement, whatever it is, to your object in frame 2. Then you copy that and you hide it, and then you go to frame 3 and paste it.
I gotcha. Yeah. So, like, for example, in the first ad that we watched, where it went in that little door from one room to another. Now, we know that that was a tween in between those two frames. Was that, let's just say, the image of the boy between both those rooms? Was that their transition shot?
It was a transition, and this is a cartoon. I mean, they're doing some of the backgrounds and so on. It seems like the broad colors and lines could be done with tweens and the movement of that, but the individual boy walking, that was not a tween.
That was actual animation.
Right.
Okay.
So I want you to
but like
this with your eyes wide open.
Like the one that we just watched, where it goes from one image of something with movement in it to a different image with movement in it. That was a tween in between those two, to where it just kind of slid them over or slid the new one in, right?
Yeah, this one here?
Yeah. So like the frame here where it has this guy, where they had the forest, which is what he's looking in now, that was a previous one. So from him pulling that, seeing that forest into that globe, I guess you can say, that was your tween.
Yeah, if shapes, solids, lines and solids can move and transform, then it's a tween. It can be done with a tween.
Gotcha. So like the swirls they did in the one thing, and then it moved to be a line in the second one, that was your tween.
Yeah, if it swirls, you got to be a little bit careful, just because that would be a shape tween probably.
Okay, I'm just saying, like the one previous to this one that's up, it had the circles and the movement, and then it went into another one using those same lines. That was a tween between the two.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so let's call it a night. And I know it's late for you, so let's plan on meeting. I'll send out an email asking about whether or not they would mind if we moved it an hour earlier. But am I hearing you say that it works better for you to be an hour earlier, or did I hear that you...
An hour earlier wouldn't be I mean, if it runs over, then it's not close to midnight.
Right.
But it's one of those, here's the thing. I can work easier in the evening doing classes after 7 o'clock than before. So
Yeah,
yes,
I got that.
but I'll take it.
7 o'clock, that's 5 p.m. So we could shoot for...
Eight's a lot better for me just because then I have no kid.
Yeah.
And I can focus on class.
Okay.
But if you have issues and you have to keep it at 9, I'm fine. I've had late classes like this before. So
Okay. All right. I'm going to send out an announcement, get some feedback. And right now, we'll still plan on 9 unless I say otherwise based upon feedback. I don't want to, I've been told that, never change a time. Once you've announced it, never change it. So there's a chance that we might be stuck with 9 p.m.
And we have class just on Monday then?
Monday and Wednesday.
Monday and Wednesday. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate it. And I'll upload the video later tonight. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Take care.
Yep. Night.